Hi, this is Mike Myer, CEO and founder of Quiq. Today, I have Kyle McIntyre, head of AI engineering, here with me today. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI. There's been a lot of press and a lot of noise. Everybody's heard of ChatGPT. People are trying to figure out what it means for them. And they may not completely understand it. So we thought we'd spend a little bit of time on explaining our view of what's changing and what it all means. And so, Kyle, maybe you could summarize for folks who are probably business users, and you are a super technical, brilliant person. So help us, common people, understand what's going on in the world of AI these days.
Yeah, it certainly is confusing if you're watching LinkedIn feeds and things like that. I myself, I'm a software engineer, and I've kind of made a career out of being a little bit cautious of new technology and sort of waiting for the more nuanced view, or just frankly being a bit more skeptical about things. And that was my initial attitude towards ChatGPT. However, after playing with it and learning more about it and reading some of the papers and whatnot, I've come to realize that it does mark a major paradigm shift for industry. And I think the reason for that is because it has, in many cases, radically lowered the bar to build compelling AI applications. Previously, you might have needed an in-house machine learning team, a large data set, some big servers, and now in many cases you can replace all those things with a new practice called prompt engineering, which is essentially leveraging the deep language understanding and generation capabilities of this new class of LLMs to provide compelling AI without all the baggage. And so the bar has been lowered, the velocity has increased dramatically. There's still plenty of use cases for in-house and custom ML models, but the potential impact for large language models like ChatGPT is hard to understate. And I've read a lot of things comparing it to being as impactful as the introduction of the iPhone. My current belief is it's at least that big.
Could be as big as the internet, which changed everything.
Could be.
Could be. Well, we'll see. That's awesome. Can you unpack a little bit what generative AI and transformers are? Like, what do those technologies mean?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot. So the term generative AI, I think it really stems back historically in machine learning. Machine learning models used to fall into one of two camps, either a discriminative model or a generative model. A discriminative model is focused on making a decision. Let's think about image classification. Is this a picture of a dog or a cat or a goat? So it's taking the input and it's discriminating, it's classifying it into one of many categories potentially. A generative model was different. You would train a generative model and it would learn statistical things about the data that it learned from, but its goal wasn't to classify things. It was more to take its probabilistic model to create new content, novel content that hadn't necessarily been there before. And so that is kind of the more historical meaning of a generative model. Since the introduction of ChatGPT, I think the term generative AI has taken on sort of a new meaning that is still rooted in that original meaning, which is these large language models are exhibiting such a strong ability to follow arbitrary human instructions that can be somewhat complex and provide really compelling responses to them, that now generative AI has not just the connotation that we're going to generate new novel content, but it sort of has this element of, and it's going to be very smart, and it's going to be a very rigorous completion of the instructions you gave it. So it's kind of taking on a new meaning right now. I'd like to just ground the concept of generative AI in a language model. Generative AI, when you think about ChatGPT, the way it works, it's text in, text out. So the text in is often called a prompt or your instructions, what you'd like the model to do. And then it's going to generate a response or a completion to those. And it's generative in the sense that it, after it's read your prompt, the response that it generates is created one token or one word at a time. So it's not like it's picking from some big pool of possible things it might say. It's very unbounded what it could say because it generates things one word at a time. So maybe that gives some more flavor for what this word generative that's buzzing around actually means.
How about transformers?
Yeah, so transformers are a very important underlying technology that's enabling the advances that we're seeing in LLMs. So transformers were formally introduced in 2017 by Google. And at a high level, I would describe it like this. Imagine that as a human, somebody asked you to read a lengthy Wikipedia article, close the tab, and then open up a Word doc and write a translation of that Wikipedia article. Like, that'd be pretty tough, right? Circa 2017, machine translation was working pretty well on shorter texts, but on longer text situations like I just described, it was struggling because the machine learning architectures of the day sort of had that view of the world that you were going to read the entire source text and just have to have it memorized in your head and translate it purely from memory. And so the transformer architecture allowed probably a more human-like or natural behavior to occur within the machine, where as it was generating the translation, it would continually go back and reference the source document to help it kind of pick the next word in the translation. And as you can imagine, when you're generating a translation, the parts of the source document that you need to pay attention to pick the next word changes while you're generating that translation. So the transformer architecture originally was introduced to allow translation over much longer documents by going back and referencing the source documents. But in 2017, researchers realized, look, this concept of going back and rereading things from the past, that's not just useful for translation. That's just general for processing text or sequences of data in general. So even if we're not translating, let's go back to ChatGPT now. So it's text in and text out, one word at a time. What the transformer architecture is allowing to happen in that case is, as each token is generated, the machine learning model doesn't have to just have a complete memorization of everything that's happened up till that point. When it goes to select the tokens, it can kind of go back and reread both the prompt that you send in and the output that it's already generated to help it make the next best decision for the next token. And also, the transformer architecture is also enabling each individual token or each individual word to be contextualized in light of all the other words that are in the text. So the summary of the transformer architecture is that it allowed deeper understanding of words because their meaning was fully informed by all other words in the text. And it also enabled that understanding over much longer sequences because you always had the freedom to kind of go back and look at the earlier text. One more example on that would be, imagine you're a human taking a test and you read some complex instructions and you're working on your answer. How frequently do you go back and sort of reread the instructions to make sure you're doing the right thing? The transformer architecture is sort of the key that allows large language models to exhibit that type of behavior and have such smart responses.
Cool. Good explanation. And I think your analogy of the test in the Wikipedia article helps to contextualize like what's actually going inside of the machine. Clearly, there's a lot more complicated stuff than just that simple explanation, but it's taken a long time to get to where we are today. So obviously it must be pretty complex. So Kyle, the capabilities of ChatGPT and the large language models, like that's amazing. in your explanation for how generative and transformers work, that was really useful. But it seems like the problem's solved. Like this stuff is now available on the off the shelf. People can go use it on the internet. Is there anything left for us to build here at Quiq? And that's a little bit of a loaded question, because I know you and the team have been working on quite a bit of stuff. So what is what's unique, and what are we doing on top of large language models that are really going to take it to the next level for businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't recommend any business to go out and just directly hook up to Chat GPT without any additional thinking or restraint about how that might work. So when you think about Chat GPT, it was trained on a bunch of web data up to a certain date, and then it also saw a lot of good examples of following complex instructions and went through some very interesting and cutting edge fine-tuning techniques. But at the end of the day, it's somewhat of an unbridled resource that is a product of the data it's been trained on, which might not be representative of the data you want it to see or how you want it to behave. And so at Quiq, we're kind of envisioning, we're building tools that are going to leverage the linguistic strengths and capabilities of LLMs, but sort of restrain them or contextualize them so that they are always operating in the best interest of your business. And so to get an LLM to operate in the best interest of your business, there's several problems you need to solve. For one, you don't want it to just fall back to what it learned when it was trained. You want to provide it with your own knowledge, your own information, perhaps your own product catalog, and all of that information is volatile and not something it necessarily saw during training. So at Quiq, we're building out tools to make it easy to feed all the right information into the LLM prompt to enable it to provide the best response and always kind of stay on message with your customers. So that's a big thing we're doing. Also, as you get into more complex reasoning tasks, LLMs are very impressive, but they do have limitations. Sometimes the task is just too complex, or perhaps just the input that you need to pass it to help it do the task is too long. These things have fundamental token limits to them. When you start bumping up against that stuff, it's not sufficient enough to just send your question into ChatGPT and say, here's this complex situation, solve it for me. Instead, you need to start kind of building an algorithm on top of the LLM. This process is called prompt chaining. And essentially, it's taking the complex task that you know the LLM can help you with, but it's too big, and you're breaking it down into multiple steps, and perhaps using the LLM in a more introspective way. Instead of just saying, generate the answer to this user question, maybe first let's ask it, do you have enough information to correctly answer this user question? So at Quiq, we're building out all the tooling to kind of get the best out of the LLM, but to make sure it's enterprise ready. A few other things on that front. You also wouldn't want to just hook up directly to an LLM and not have any analytics or understanding of what sort of user experiences are going on in there. This is a challenging area because LLMs are so powerful. They have these strong reasoning capabilities. You can potentially solve a lot of customer issues, but what's going on in that thing is a total black box. And so at Quiq, we're also building out tools to help nonetheless track user journeys of users, even while the automation that they're dealing with is primarily enabled by an LLM under the hood. And we have other important things too, like SOC 2 compliance for the communications with the customers, and support across multiple channels, so you can potentially build a LLM based automation and have it run across all sorts of various channels, like
SMS, Apple Messages, Google Business Messages, WhatsApp, Twitter direct messages, Facebook Messenger. We support about a dozen different channels. So right, yeah, you want to build an experience and be able to leverage it across all the other channels. Okay, super insightful. You're right, there's a lot of work and a lot of potential here. I'm excited about how the product is going. Some of the listeners might be interested in another topic that is recorded in another session, and that's really the trust, the safety, the security associated with large language models. Because immediately when we talk about LLMs and ChatGPT, the question of security oftentimes gets raised. So encourage everyone to listen to the other recording that we have on trust and safety, and we'll talk about why those topics are important, but also for the uses that we're using, maybe not as risky as other uses like internet search. So join us there. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any point in time. Thank you.
Thank you.